My name is Tracy from Just So Happy, and so excited to have all of you with us for our 12 Days of Christmas series. For today's Christmas present to you guys, we are making a little gadget cushion. So it can be used for a lot of different things. Hold your cell phone next to your sewing table, or you could use it in the kitchen to prop up your tablet or your phone for recipes. Anywhere that you just needed to prop a little bit of something up to use. It also has these nifty little tabs on it. If you were going to use it in your sewing area, you can hook your scissors to it or your marking pen, all those little bits and bobs that have a tendency to walk off from right in front of my sewing machine. So let's get started. All right, so let's talk real quick about the supplies that we need. So in order to make our gadget cushion, it comes, our pattern actually comes on fusible interfacing, and the pattern piece is actually printed on here with exactly where you need to cut, where you're going to sew. It has little markings and everything, makes it super quick and easy. And when you buy the panel, to make it, you actually get the interfacing to make 2 gadget cushions for every panel that you buy. We need a 10-inch square for each of our gadget cushions, rice or crushed walnut in order to fill our cushions with, a funnel so we don't make a mess. We're going to need some hand sewing needles and some thread in order to close it up. An iron, so we can fuse our interfacing to our square, and then we'll need scissors and a rotary cutter, and then that's it. Okay, now let's get started putting things together. So for my fusible interfacing, on our pattern, our directions are printed on one side, and if you feel the back side of it, it's a little bit bumpy. That's actually our glue that's going to fuse our fabric to the pattern piece. So I press my 10-inch square just to get the wrinkles out, and I'm going to lay my 10-inch square right down on top of my fusible interfacing. I'm just going to get it lined up. And I'm going to give it a press. I'm just going to go right here in the middle for just a second to get it started. Then I'm going to flip it over and finish pressing it, because I don't want to get the fusible glue on our iron. Have a big mess with that. Doesn't take very much to get it to all stick. If you were using a printed fabric, you would want to make sure that you did the wrong side of your fabric to your interfacing. With using my batik, doesn't really matter, so I didn't really have to pay attention to that. Now we are going to go cut out on the cut lines, and then we'll get sewing. Okay, now we're going to cut things apart. I am going to cut on our dotted lines right here where we have the scissors. So we'll cut around all 4 sides of our 10-inch square, and then we are also going to cut right here in the middle. So we have this little piece right here, and then our big piece over here. So we're just going to go right around. Nothing too terribly hard. Okay, so there we have our square cut out, and I'm just going to cut this little piece off right here. This little piece right here is going to be for our tabs, our tool tabs. So we have these 3 little tabs on the side and the back, and then we have one on the front. So that's what we're going to use to make this piece will get used for. So I create my center line. Just a quick press to get that crease in there. Then we're going to fold our outside edge to the center. Give that a little press. Same thing for the other side. Okay, so now what we've done is we've created our little tool tabs, and all of our raw edges are in the center. And I'm going to keep this folded, and then I'm going to sew 1/8 of an inch down both sides of it, sewing it closed. Yes. So now we're going to sew our tool tab closed. I find it easiest. I want to sew this closed 1/8 of an inch from the edge. So I find that easiest to do by using my 1/4 inch foot and then lining up my fabric with the inside of the toe. That will give me 1/8 of an inch sewing line from the edge of my tool tab. Alrighty. And we're just going to sew right down, all the way straight down the tab piece. Down one side and then down the other. There's no need to sew across the ends. You certainly can if you want to, if that makes your life easier. But we're going to cut this piece apart so we don't actually have to have it just a little bit. Okay, so now that we have our tool tab sewn together, 1/8 of an inch from either side, we're going to cut this into 4 equal pieces. The easiest way to do that is going to be to fold it in half and cut on the fold line. And then we're going to fold each of these pieces in half and cut them on the fold line. Alright, so now I have my 4 tool tab pieces, and they are going to get put on our interfacing right at each of the marks. So they actually have little markings right here printed on the interfacing for you. I'm going to fold them in half, and then I'm going to place it on the right side of my fabric, right where the interfacing mark is at. So you can see I got my tab right under there, and then I'm just going to sew right over it. You can use as many or as little of the tool tabs as you would like. If you don't, you're going to use this in the kitchen and you have no need for little tabs to hold scissors or marking pen or anything like that, you can certainly skip this step. I'm going to put my 3rd one in here. And the last one. There we are. So now you can see we have all of our little tabs attached, just sewn on. The next thing we're going to do is that we need to sew right here on these 2 dotted lines that are marked guideline. So whenever we go to put our final piece together, it creates this little piece down here on the bottom that will keep our device from sliding off. But we need to know where we need to sew. So we're actually going to sew on these lines before we fold it in half and put it together, so that we have that little guide in place. Next, we are going to fold on our center line, right sides together, and we're actually going to sew on our letters. So we're going to start with A, and we're going to sew from our dots up here down to our ending dot down here. We're going to skip this little piece, and then we're going to sew our B section. So our B starts right here. We're going to sew to the corner, leave our needle in, rotate, and then we'll end up sewing all the way across to the other side of our gadget. And then up here at the top, we're also going to have a little dot for our C. So we'll sew from our C dot out to the edge. So we're going to fold this in half. Give it a little finger press just to hold everything in place. And now we're going to sew. So I'm sewing with 1/4 inch. So that's where our little 1/4 inch foot comes in super handy. I'm going to sew all the way down here to our dot at the end. Then I'm going to take a couple stitches back to lock it in place. Then we're going to move over here to B. I want to take a couple locking stitches right here in the beginning because this is going to be an open hole where we add our rice or crushed walnut. So I'm going to rotate and then just sew all the way out here to the edge where we have our fold. Now that we have our A and our B sewn, we're going to flip it over so that we can see our C. So instead of stitching just right across straight here at the top like you would expect, you're actually going to open it, and we're going to bring our seam line out here to the center. And that should give you a little dot right here, a matching one on the other side, and that is our C line. Can you see that? So we're going to start at our dot on our C line right here and sew out to the edge. Alright, so now we have our gadget all sewn together, and we want to turn it right side out. We are going to come back to these 2 lines that our guidelines that we sewed when we started before we turned everything, and we're actually going to sew right on top of those again, creating our bottom rest for our gadgets. My thread matches pretty well, so it may be a little bit hard to see, but I do have these 2 guidelines that we sewed. So we're going to sew right on top of those. Get the second one right here. And we are just about done. So you can see how easy this is. It's such a quick project. You'll want to make one for everybody, one to have for every room. I'll turn my corners, make sure my corners poked out real good right here. And now we're going to actually fill it with our rice or walnut shells, if that's what you have. Okay. Rice in our bottom section. I'm going to stick a straight pin in here to hold it closed so we don't lose it all. Okay, now that we have that pinned closed, let's use our funnel to fill our top section. Use the end of our funnel to work the rice around so we fill in. All right, I think that's pretty good. All right, so we're gonna pin this end closed as well. So you don't want to fill it up too full. You want to be able to have some room so it will shape. Depending on how far up you want it to sit, you may want to put a little bit more in, but I do like it to be kind of loose and sit back a little bit, but that can be personal preference. So we're going to pin it closed. Okay, now we're going to sew our little gadget holder closed. So I've got my hand needle and some thread, and I'm just going to do a quick whip stitch to hold everything closed. You do want to keep your stitches a little on the small side in order to make sure, you know, your rice or your ground walnut doesn't leak out. So here we are, all done. So we have our little, I have some thread snips in one of my little tool holders. Have my Frixion pin in the back so it doesn't walk off, and it just props my phone up. Easy as that. Super simple project, easy to knock a ton of them out for all your friends, the grandkids, anybody who has a need to prop up a phone or a tablet next to the kitchen, sewing space, anything like that. Thanks so much for joining us for our 12 Days of Christmas.